Howdy, boys and girls. Welcome back to the Carla and Crappy Show. My name is Crappy. I'm in Pittsburgh. That's Carla. She's in Nashville. Hi, Carla.
Hi. Where it's still hot.
Where it's still hot.
It's almost October. Can we get over this now, please? I'm still drinking summer beer because it was 91 degrees today.
I have windows open and there is a cool breeze, and it feels awesome. So it's coming.
Jealous.
It's coming sometime. I mean, after all, we're at week 5 of the college football season. So it's going to start feeling like fall here at some point soon. Before we take on week 5, as we do, we're going to talk about week 4 and with the things that we've noticed and the fact that one of us went to South Bend and saw the game of the century. But we'll get to that. We'll get to that. Carla, I obviously I watched a little bit of Cornell's game on my phone, and we'll get to that. And then obviously I was at Ohio State and Notre Dame. So I saw almost nothing last weekend, other than just getting updates wherever I could. What did I miss?
Well, and to be honest, I missed a lot of stuff too because it was Middle's homecoming, and so we were at the homecoming parade, and then we came home. But I did manage to catch a little bit in the window, kind of the end of the noon slate and the beginning of the 3:30 slate. I saw just a little bit of that. And then as I was coming home from the Middle game, I left a little bit early from the game. I listened to, I immediately flipped to the Penn State game and was like, okay, this is over. And immediately then changed my radio to Sirius XM. Wonderful. Immediately flipped over one channel over to listen to your game. And I listened to that the entire drive home because that was, even over a radio call, was an amazing game, but I'll let you get into that one. And I was home in time to watch the end of the game. So I watched the end of the Ohio State Notre Dame game at my house. What I do want to talk about though, and there are a lot of things, like there's so much good football last week, and I was doing some scoreboard chasing more so than watching. Obviously Penn State even surprised me with a shutout on whiteout night. So that was a stunning performance. We thought Oregon might be able to run out some points on Colorado. I don't think either of us saw that coming. That score either. That was a beatdown. Yeah. So some of the games that we thought were going to be pretty competitive weren't as competitive as we thought. We were wrong about Ole Miss. Bama doing Bama things. I'll talk about that when we get into the Ole Miss game a little bit later. Where I want to focus my time is on Florida State because I didn't see the entirety of that game, but I did see a good chunk of the fourth quarter in that game. And I'm going to call this the Florida State conundrum. What do we do about Florida State? Because, we talked about this last week. What Florida State team are we going to see? Right. And against Boston College, they showed some of those mental lapses that we've seen in years past with Florida State. And we thought this was the year they're going to get over that, and that this Clemson game was going to be a real big test. Florida State should have lost that game. The Tigers missed a 29-yard field goal, 29-yarder with less than 2 minutes in the fourth quarter. He shanked it left. Like, it wasn't even close. That should have won the game for Clemson. Florida State couldn't do anything really offensively to try to go down with, that much time remaining to try to go down and win the game in regulation. Ended up giving the ball back to Clemson. Clemson had like 30-ish seconds when they got the ball back. And I don't know what the heck Dabo was doing with clock management. They had a nice pass down the middle. And Clemson didn't have any timeouts. All you had to do is clock the ball. And you would have had a shot to maybe potentially run one more play to get back in the field goal range and try again. You have nothing to lose at that point. And like Clemson just kind of lackadaisically walked down the field, and some of the players started walking to the sideline. There was time. You could have run at least one more play, maybe even two, depending on what your play call was. They just immediately just kind of like went, okay, we're playing for overtime here. Florida State in overtime, Keon Coleman caught one heck of a pass. And Florida State had the ball first in overtime. And It was beautiful. And so they're up a touchdown. And I don't know what play calling was for Clemson, but they did absolutely jack squat during their possession. And that was the ball game. So I'm sitting here asking myself, like, is Florida State really one of the top 4 teams in the country right now? I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. The performance the last 2 weeks, like, as you alluded to, is not really what we thought this team was going to be this year. Yes, they found ways to pull out wins, but they haven't been pretty. And the other challenge here is that we don't really get another test for Florida State. We get Duke in October, if Duke can keep up what they're doing. They don't really face another tough test, pending whether or not Miami can keep things together long enough in the ACC to make that game in November interesting. And that's even questionable. So would an unbeaten and conference champ Florida State top an unbeaten and conference champ Texas? If it came down to that, I don't know. And the question, I think, kind of leads into I want to hear obviously a lot about your South Bend game. I think you can legitimately ask yourself the question, are Penn State and Ohio State better than Florida State right now?
I think Penn State is.
Arguably.
Without question.
I think, yes. I think both teams are better.
I'm sticking Ohio State in the middle of that argument after last week is I recognize that I'm not neutral, but I for Penn State, and this is a good way just to touch on what they did over the weekend. Penn State continues to look like the most complete team in the Big Ten. I am terrified by that game. I know it doesn't. I've got a month before it comes to that, but Penn State is better than Florida State. Yeah, for sure. It's a much better defense, and more consistent. I mean, the stuff with Florida State, I think maybe you attribute that to this is a team that is figuring out how to win. But your point about Clemson, that was a situation where Clemson lost more than Florida State won. That does not help, and it does not give me faith that Florida State has moved past the kind of mental lapses that have plagued them the last couple of years. So, I would feel good about playing them right now. If I'm the magical schedule master for Ohio State football, I would be okay with that. I'd be a lot more concerned about playing Penn State than I would about Florida State.
Well, and it's interesting because I started doing some date looking, right, to see how all this schedule stuff was going to play out. Man, clear your calendars for October 21st, because in addition to our game on October 21st, you also have Florida State Duke.
Okay.
Is on October 21st. So we've got some really big games coming up. And that's, I think October 21st is setting up to be another weekend like we just had, game wise, if teams keep playing the way that they are. So, just right now, just look at your calendars, cancel your plans, move things around. You're going to want to watch college football all day on October 21st.
Okay. That's cool. That's the weekend after we go to Ithaca to watch Cornell in person. So, we'll be able to muster a weekend off, a Saturday off where we do nothing but football.
Yep.
I said when Ohio State and Notre Dame announced this home and home that we just wrapped up, that I told my folks I don't know what we can do, what you can do but I want to go see that game in South Bend. I want to see a game there, and this is, who knows next time it's going to happen. So most like for my birthday and for Christmas, we got tickets from my dad to actually go to this game, and the experience outside of the game itself, and you guys know how that turned out. The experience is fantastic. South Bend is a gorgeous town. It's Notre Dame is a gorgeous little campus. There's the dome right there, and Touchdown Jesus. Although Touchdown Jesus looks like he's doing H, so if you stand in front of him and do the O, you get the OH thing going on. There were a lot of Ohio State fans doing that, including me. A game day thing that I was super impressed with, and this is so easy. I was perhaps mostly impressed with this because of how bad traffic is on Ohio State's campus, and how I talked a little bit about that last season, just what a cluster it was trying to get around and get anywhere on campus, even to the lots where we'd been tailgating for years. Notre Dame has a thing where you figure out which lots you're going to, and there's a button you click on the parking website, and it loads directions from wherever you are to a waypoint that's programmed into Waze, the navigation app, and it takes you directly to the lot by the most by the fastest way possible.
Nice.
It is easy. It is such a simple thing, and I don't know why this isn't done everywhere. But other schools take notice. Whether it's you can do it with Google Maps, you can do it with Waze, whatever you want, but do that. Do that. I'm driving into a town on a football Saturday. Driving into a town that I've never ever been to before, only driven past on the Indiana Turnpike, and it made it so easy. Atmosphere, very, very cool. The students are nuts, both outside the stadium and in. We didn't do any of the game day stuff. We got out there mid-afternoon and tailgate a little bit in our lot, and then walked over to kind of take in stuff that's going around on campus. It's cool because the stadium is right. It's like right there, next to residence halls. The athletic complex is right just right on campus. We were parking in outer lot, so we had to walk about a half hour to get down to the stadium, but it's right there with the library and Touchdown Jesus, and there was a good atmosphere, a lot of fun stuff going on. Notre Dame's Glee Club was playing. They were lining up. I guess the players and the band all marched from someplace from the Basilica, from the Golden Dome building. And then you get in the stadium, and it's like, it's just a real simple bowl. It's easy to see where they added on a few years ago. It's not as shallow as Michigan Stadium. So Michigan Stadium is obviously larger by almost 30,000 seats, but sight lines are better because it's more vertical than Michigan Stadium is. We were right in front of the Jumbotron, where they put most of the Ohio State fans. And you see any of the TV stuff, there's a ring of Ohio State fans in that end of the stadium. So we were up there with Ohio State's band. Very, very cool. The atmosphere was fantastic. Football itself, it felt for a while like Ohio State was just hanging on. But what you didn't realize, there were chunk plays, but none of them were killers. And to take the lead, you kind of held my breath through the whole first half, because it felt like Notre Dame had an advantage. But you get to halftime, and there's no score, and it's like, oh, okay, this didn't feel great, but no harm, no foul.
Right.
And then what you realize after the game, Ohio State's defense allowed no plays over 30 yards, held Notre Dame to 50% on third down conversions, did not allow them to convert a fourth down. And some of those plays were huge. Held a team that was averaging 43 points a game to 14. And held Sam Hartman to less than 200 yards passing and 2 touchdowns for the first time since I saw this. I had this written down. Where did I do? Oh, since 2020. And that's the difference. Although I want to give all credit to Kyle McCord. He was, for being in the situation that he's in, 2 games past being named the full-time starter. He handled himself so well. There were a couple lucky plays for sure. One that he threw late over the middle that I thought was going to end the game. but that stuff, it's going to happen with a young guy, and it didn't hurt him, fortunately, which means it didn't hurt us. And then just to see that last play that right in front of us, right, we were in that end zone. And I'm sure the Ohio State fans could be heard on TV. I haven't gone back and watched yet. But when they signaled touchdown, I'm sure you could hear us loud and clear. So just a fantastic night. The thing about Ryan Day and Lou Holtz, I noticed what Lou Holtz said on Thursday or Friday, whenever it was that he said that on McAfee's show, and I was annoyed. Lou is a guy from Ohio, and he learned how to coach under Woody Hayes. Okay, he is he has pairs of gold pants that he got for beating Ohio State or for beating Michigan when he was at Ohio State. He is a Buckeye. I wouldn't expect him to pick Ohio State. No one would. That's dumb. But that it felt like a shot. And but the thing that Ryan Day was doing after the game, he wasn't, Carla, he was not talking to you. He wasn't talking necessarily to the national media. He was talking to me. He's talking to Ohio State fans. He's talking to recruits. He was talking to his team. That's what that was for. And I think it's going to have the desired effect. Obviously, we have I almost wish we didn't have a bye week this week. So it kind of keeps some momentum going. And it's going to be a challenge when the team comes back and probably has to play a 5-0 Maryland team. But we'll get to that next week. Ryan's message got through to the audience that he intended it for. So I don't know what you thought about that whole thing. But
I haven't been following it as closely as everybody else has. But I do know there were some reports today that it was kind of almost a little tongue in cheek. That he said something to his SID along the lines of "watch this," and then he said that. So I can't get a good read on it right now, having not followed it as closely as everybody else. So, but no, I mean, it was such a big win, and it was, it's funny, talking to my dad on Sunday, and he's the Penn State alum, right? So he's diehard blue and white, and he's like, I was conflicted as to who to root for in that game, because being a Penn State fan, like, we don't like either team. Right. And I said, Dad, no. Like, we actually needed Ohio State to win that game because it's a perception thing. We need you to be undefeated when we meet on October 21st. Right. That's how that game has the meaning that it needs to have this year. So he was like, I don't know if I was happy about Ohio State winning. I was like, oh, heck, I was, because I want that to be a battle of unbeatens on the 21st, because that makes that game that much bigger. So yeah, heck of a win. Although I agree with AJ. Why the heck did Trey not get the ball? And I was listening to that. I was still in my car at that point, listening to it, and I was like, what are they doing?
Jet sweep on 4th and inches is dumb. That was one that I wish Ryan could have another crack at. But yeah, that is absolutely correct.
Before we move on, I had a couple other quick notes from this weekend, other than my Florida State, what are you doing rant. First of all, I am wearing, people can't see this, I am wearing my Robert Morris t-shirt today, because my Robert Morris Colonial was the only one of my teams playing a homecoming game this weekend that actually won the game.
Nice.
Robert Morris blew out Virginia Lynchburg 46-0. That's got to be the biggest win that Robert Morris has had in quite some time. So kudos Colonials, go Bob. They play Howard this weekend. So that's kind of an intriguing
Bob and Howard
matchup, playing in HB. Bob and Howard, yeah.
Okay.
It's the Bob and Howard show. And then the other thing I wanted to mention was, even though the middle homecoming wasn't quite as exciting as we thought it was going to be, middle made a couple of mistakes. They were in that game. They were ahead at the half. First half was exciting. Second half, scoop and score and Colorado State went up 2 scores, and Middle had the ball at the end of the game, but just not enough time to really get anything going to be able to go down and drive to tie that game. That's the second time that's happened, right? It happened against Missouri, and now it's happening against Colorado State. But I will say, I actually did get an AJ screenshotted it. I actually did get on TV on Saturday night at the Middle game. I am in the crowd shot. We got all the way up to, it was rare. We got all the way up to the fence again, in the end zone. And, you can see, my friend and I, over in the far right corner. I mean, we're ants, right? We're like little tiny, I had to try to figure it out. Like I was zooming in at like 300% to say like, yep, there we are. We're right there. But yeah, no, it was just a fun experience. Lots of Colorado State fans because, local alumni associations, and Colorado State doesn't come to Nashville very often. Right.
Okay.
To the region. So they had a great turnout. But yeah, just a lot of fun, a lot of atmosphere. Good weekend. It was a beautiful night. So it was a great weekend of college football. We left the game and went out to the TV and caught a little bit of stuff there. We left the game in the third quarter, and then I came home to watch the rest of the nightcap. So it's just such a good weekend. It was such a good weekend of college football, even with the Middle loss. Middle will fight for another day. We still have a conference to go win. So we'll talk about, I'll mention that a little bit. So
yeah, absolutely.
This week's gonna be hard to live up to last weekend.
Yeah, it's going to be tough. But you could watch the undefeated Cornell Big Red Bears. If you're looking for something to do middle of the afternoon. Cornell is 2-0. This is the only other game that I watched any bit of. Watched it on my phone as we were getting ready to go to South Bend from where we were staying. Cornell is 2-0 after another win on Saturday. This time they were at Ivy League opponent Yale. They needed every single tick of the clock to do it. They kicked a last-second field goal to win the game 23-21. It was a comeback win. My nephew, Cornell's running back Drew Powell, had 10 carries for 21 yards and added 2 receptions on top of that, I think, for 2 receptions for a total of 8. He seems to be the guy that they rely on in pass pro or to release and be an outlet for the quarterback if that's called for. So he's got himself in a kind of rotation where maybe he's not the featured running back, but he's got a lot of responsibility and a lot of touches. So it's been a pleasure so far watching him get to play now that he's finally healthy. Knock on the wood in my desk. The team plays its home opener Saturday, 2 p.m. Saturday against non-conference opponent Colgate. The Raiders are winless. So I hope we'll be looking at another Cornell win on Saturday. Nice. If you want to do that, they're on ESPN Plus every time. We get to see the Cornell home broadcast crew, which is interesting. Assuming they're the same guys. We haven't seen them yet this year because this is the home opener. So, but yeah, I'd feel free to tune in and watch some Ivy League football. AJ is going to tell us about the Group of 5 / Pac-12 After Dark slate. Perhaps including his beloved Hawaii Rainbow Warriors, who are not on After Dark. I think they play at 4 somewhere on the Mountain West Coast. So you can watch Hawaii in daylight, and I'm sure AJ's going to tell you about that. AJ.
Hello, everyone. It is this week's Group of 5 After Dark report. We go now to Thursday night, 7:30 p.m. on CBSSN, the Network of Champions. We have 100 miles of hate between Middle Tennessee State and Western Kentucky. Western Kentucky's favored by 6. Over-under is 60. That's healthy. Western Kentucky is good. They lost last week to a very good Troy team and got absolutely destroyed by Ohio State, and I will not hold that against them. Middle kept it close for a while with Colorado State till Colorado State pulled away. Got wrecked by Alabama, so both teams have played a top 10 team and got destroyed loss. So that's fair. And honestly, Middle kept it close against Missouri, who beat Memphis. So this is a pretty good game. I see Middle getting up for this game because it's a rivalry game, and I see them going out and getting the win. Also on Friday night at 9 p.m. on FS1, we have Utah at Oregon State. Oregon State's favored by 3.5. Over-under is 44.5. This is a serious question for Utah. Do they have an offense that can do literally anything? Because they held UCLA down and just kind of sat on them for a while. They won 14-7 in classic Big Ten fashion. They might be the Iowa of the West. Meanwhile, Oregon State got into an absolute shootout with Washington State and lost the Pac-2 national championship. Congratulations to the Cougs, by the way. But we have a bit of a problem here. Can Oregon State score on Utah? And if Utah can keep Oregon State at bay, can Utah put up points to actually beat Oregon State? This should be a really good game. There's a reason why Oregon State is favored by 3.5. Go Beavs. Friday night, also 10:15 p.m., we have our first new Big 12 versus new Big 12 game as far as I can think about. Cincinnati going to BYU. Cincinnati's favored by 2 in Provo, which is wild to think about until you realize that BYU does not seem to still does not really have a functioning offense. They scored 38 against Arkansas, and I still don't know how they did that. They lost to Kansas last week in very convincing fashion. This is not the teams of the past few years. They look very, very mortal. They're 3-1, but it looks suspect to me. Still don't know why Cincinnati's favored by 2 when they lost to Miami of Ohio, which is a thing that happened. Go Red Hawks. Yeah, Red Hawks. And Blaine Gabbert's younger brother. That's hilarious too. But we do know that Colorado is fraudulent. So we're going to touch on them for a second. USC at Colorado at noon. USC is favored by 21.5. The over-under on this game is 74. This is going to be pointsy. Both teams are going to score a crap ton of points. Oregon literally punched Colorado in the mouth over and over and over again. They did not want to let Colorado even have a sliver of a good look in that game. Dan Lanning said they do it for clicks, we do it for wins, which is a heck of a line. By the way, there is a video on Oregon's football Twitter account that is the cinematic recap of the Colorado game, and it made me want to run through a wall for Dan Lanning. Anyways, can USC stop Colorado enough to win this game? That's really what this comes down to. Colorado's going to attempt to score points, but Colorado's defense and especially their lines are not good. And if USC can shut down Colorado enough, they'll win, probably cover. If they can't, this is going to be a fireworks factory on fire. So let's tune in and watch maybe a little bit at noon, because you shouldn't watch Penn State and Northwestern. Don't do that. Also, at noon, we have UAB at Tulane. Tulane's going to beat the brakes off of UAB. Speaking of celebrity coaches who got a little bit out over their skis, Trent Dilfer, this ain't it. At noon on ESPNU, we have South Alabama going to James Madison. JMU's favored by 3.5. James Madison is for real. They came up from FCS and have not skipped a beat. It is a travesty that the NCAA does not let them play in the conference championships or any bowl games for this year as well. They did not get an appeal on the waiver that they filed. Screw the NCAA for that nonsense. Let JMU cook. South Alabama, still a very good football team. They are 2-2. They did lose to Central Michigan, which is concerning, honestly. Losing to Tulane to start the season, nothing to sneeze at. And you beat Oklahoma State by a lot. You made Oklahoma State look absolutely terrible in Stillwater, and then you lost at home to Central Michigan. Heck of a letdown game. I think the Jags get it back. I still think James Madison is going to win that game. Also, real quick, I just realized something. USC at Colorado, that's a noon game. They're playing in Colorado. That is a 10 a.m. kick. Just throwing that out there. That game might get weird because it's a 10 a.m. kick. Anyways, we're going to scroll down the list here, and we're going to talk about Houston at Texas Tech. 3:30 on Saturday on FS2. Hope you know where that channel is on your cable guides. Texas Tech looked really, really good against Oregon. They lost at West Virginia. I don't blame them. It was rainy and cold, and that's not your weather. And they lost at Wyoming to start the season, and that's Laramie, and you should never go to Laramie. You hear me, football teams? I want to see more of you in Laramie, but also you should know not to do that. This is something that I think is a touch of an anxiety bowl for Houston. This is a game where they can prove themselves. Dana needs to get it together. This ain't it. This is not what they moved to the Big 12 to do. And I think if given the opportunity, Dana would get fired for Texas Tech's Joey McGuire to come down to Houston and cook. I think Texas Tech wins this game going away, and Dana's seat continues to heat up. We are going to go down to Boise State at Memphis at 4 p.m. on ESPN2. Boise State going to Memphis because Boise State scheduled terribly. I don't know who their AD thought this team was going to be a few years ago, but Boise State started the season at Washington, got UCF at home. They did beat North Dakota, which never schedule a Dakota at all. Don't do that. And then they got into a shootout with San Diego State, 34-31. They won last week. And now they go to Memphis. And then they get San Jose State and Colorado State before the bye, and then end the season with 3 of the top Mountain West teams with Wyoming, Fresno State, and Air Force. Boise, this is not your year. This is not it. And going to Memphis is a bad idea. I think Memphis wins by a lot in this game, and people start to question what Boise is doing at all. My beloved Bows are going to UNLV, and normally that's like a gimme game, and UNLV is actually good this year. Good this year. Congratulations to Barry Odom for turning that around very quickly. That's at 4 p.m. on the Mountain West Network. You got to go to themw.com, and then you can watch the game live from there. It's a very weird setup, but you can still do it. And it's free, by the way. You don't have to have like a cable subscription or anything. I'm really sorry, Bows. You're going to lose that game. Congratulations on your win. I stayed up and I watched. It was great. We are going to keep scrolling. A game that I would have been excited for last year. I'm not excited for this year. Coastal Carolina at Georgia Southern. This is on the NFL Network because why not? Georgia Southern's really, really good. And their quarterback, whose name is currently escaping me, Davis Brin. That's what it is. Davis Brin. I wanted to say David Breen. I don't know why. But he's throwing the hell out of the football. They're going to try and score 1,000,000 points, and I love that about Clay Helton and this offense. Kyle Van Treese was last year's quarterback who was doing the exact same thing. Coastal Carolina is a normal football team now. They don't do any of the fun offense stuff they were doing under Chadwell. It's not the same. And to be entirely honest, Grayson McCall probably should have transferred and gone somewhere else. He tried to run it back for one more year with Coastal and finish as a Chanticleer, which I get and I love the loyalty, but he is not running the same offense and does not look as good as he did in the previous years. Georgia Southern rolls here. Don't look now. Georgia State's 4-0. Just throwing that out there. They're 4-0 and they welcome Troy, and Georgia State's favored by 1 at home. This game is going to be incredibly close. I would love to see Georgia State win this game and be 5-0 in the Sun Belt. I think that would just be amazing. They're playing incredibly well, and you should watch Georgia State football. I'm sorry. I don't normally cover Big Ten football. This is normally not a thing I do. Michigan State is going to Iowa, and Iowa is favored by 12.5, which means somebody thinks Iowa can score 13 points. The over-under for this game is 36.5. This game is going to be gross, like super gross. Don't do this. It's at 7:30 p.m. on NBC. This is a nationally televised game. I don't know why they did that, and neither should you. A game you could watch at 8 p.m. is on CBS Sports Network, the network of champions, San Diego State at Air Force. Go watch Air Force be great. Air Force is truly great. They are scoring a ton of points. They're putting up a ton of yards, and all of it is on the ground. They are running true option football. They are 66th in the nation in total yards with about 400 a game. 55.3 yards passing. That is 133rd in FBS football. That is dead last. and running 340.5 yards per game. It's a delight. And they're converting almost 59% of their third downs. Just truly incredible work by Air Force, and their defense is absolutely destructive. Go watch Air Force dismantle San Diego State. Our nightcap, little light. We have Washington going to Arizona. That might actually be somewhat fun. That game kicks off at 10 p.m. That'll be on the Pac-12 network, so I'll watch it for you because I'm the only one who can see the Pac-12 network. It's like Ghosts. I'm the only one who can see it. And everybody's like, what are you talking about? And I'm like, no, there's this great game on this network. And everybody's like, I don't know what you're talking about. This is what I'm talking about. That Arizona might keep this squirrely. I don't know that anybody has a defense to play with Washington right now. But Arizona might have the Jaden DeLora random number generator generate a great number. And finally, at 10:30, we have Nevada going to Fresno State. If you want to stay up nice and late, you can. You don't have to. Fresno State's favored by 25.5, and I fully expect them to cover. Nevada is bad. And Fresno State has reloaded somehow. Mikey Keene is Jake Hayner cloned. I don't know what they did. I'm pretty sure that somewhere in like the agricultural valley of Fresno, they have figured out how to not only clone vegetables, but people. And they have cloned Jake Hayner and named him Mikey Keene because he does the same stuff, and it is truly fun to watch. That's been your Group of 5 After Dark report. Go watch some football this weekend. Should be an early night because it's at 10 p.m. But hey, let's watch some football. Let's have a time. Back to you, Carla and Crappy.
Thank you, AJ. For the big boy games, we don't have the earth shattering stuff we had a week ago, but there is interesting stuff nonetheless. Starting in fact, on Friday night, 8 p.m. on FS1, number 10 Utah at number 19 Oregon State. The Beavers, in spite of those rankings, the Beavers are favored by 3.5 points. The AJ Fun Index is a perhaps not so fun 44.5 points. Carla, what do you think about this?
Yeah, so the line maker in this game, did they watch the Utah UCLA game last week? Like, that's right. Like, the Utes have been winning games with their defense because we still haven't seen Cam Rising yet this season. And so far they haven't needed him. And this was like that Utah defense, man, they just did a complete number on UCLA's prolific offense last week, right? They held the Bruins to less than 250 yards of total offense in the game, and 9, yes, that's, I can count on two hands, 9 yards rushing. Total in the entire game. Now, that includes sack yards, right? But even if you take the sack yards out of the statistics, UCLA had just 60 yards rushing on the day. I mean, this is a UCLA offense that we were impressed by going into this game, entering into this game. For Utah to hold them to 7 points and that amount of yardage, this is a Utah defense that means business to be able to stop that kind of offense. So when I look at what has been a really good Beavs offense this year, right, there's no reason for me to believe that the Utes can't do the same thing to them. They just did it last week, even on the road. Now, DJU has made an impact on this offense. He's also made some mistakes. He's got 3 picks on the season. So it is worth noting that the fact this game is in Corvallis does play a factor here. Oregon State's playing with a chip on their shoulder because of the situation that they now find themselves in with conferences. But I'm going to take kind of the Alabama approach here, and I'm going to keep rolling with the Utah defense until they give me a reason not to. That's just kind of the way that I feel right now. I think Utah wins this game. And I think, as AJ would say, hammer the under. If the Utah defense is as good as advertised, and they did that against UCLA, UCLA's offense has better numbers than Oregon State's does. Utah wins this game at home with their defense.
Okay. I and you guys are aware of this. I'm a fan of Utah football. I like the physicality. I like the defense. I like the position that it puts the Utes in a conference where that stuff doesn't always happen. I would pick Utah in almost any situation in the Pac-12. But I'm gonna go with a hunch here. I'm gonna say at home. I'm going to say, again, with the proverbial chip on the proverbial shoulder that you mentioned, because of the situation that Washington State and Oregon State are in. DJ is capable, as we know, of having the kind of game to win in this situation. He is also capable of stinking up the joint. We've seen that, and we've seen maybe even seen more examples of that sort of game from him than the other. But because this game is in Corvallis, because of the extenuating circumstances of the Pac-2 conference, I'm gonna pick the Beavers to win an upset. I guess technically it's not an upset if they're favored, but I'm gonna take the Beavers in an upset to win at home over Utes. We pick up the action again on Saturday at noon on ESPN. Number 22, Florida at Kentucky. Similar situation. Kentucky not ranked, but is favored by 1 at home. And this is the anti-AJ game of the week with an AJ fun index of 44 points. Carla, Florida and Kentucky. What do you see?
Which Florida team will we get in this game? Right? Are we going to get? Right. Are we going to get the one that looked undisciplined and scattered in the season opener at Utah, or are we going to get the team that just absolutely throttled and dominated Tennessee? Mm-hmm. Right. They look like two completely teams, and as you mentioned, Kentucky, meanwhile, this year is very quietly unbeaten. Mm-hmm. But you can argue that the Cats really haven't played anyone yet this year. Sorry, Vandy. I mean, they really haven't. So this is the classic we have no idea matchup in week 5. Right? That we're not really sure what we have out of Kentucky. I'm not sure people outside of the SEC, I guess people outside the SEC realize this, that like Florida Kentucky football is actually a pretty heated rivalry. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of emotion behind this game every year. It's not as big as Florida Tennessee, but Florida Kentucky, Florida dominated that series for a long time. Kentucky came back and bit Florida a couple years ago, and that really kind of like fired up the rivalry again. Yep. So that makes this game, it's going to be entertaining as heck, even if it's not high scoring. It's going to be your classic knock 'em out SEC battle, I think. A key to this one, I think, is that Kentucky's run defense is actually really good. Now, again, against, inferior competition here, but at least it looks like their defense is going to be good, and that should lessen Trevor Etienne's impact for the Gators and force Florida to rely more on the arm of Wisconsin transfer Graham Mertz, which we've seen again. Which Graham Mertz do we get? Right, we've seen that back from his Wisconsin days. It's a solid football rivalry. It's in Kentucky. I think it's going to be real close. I feel like Florida has momentum coming off of that Tennessee game. Mm-hmm. And they were off last week. So I'm going to say that Florida wins this game in an absolute nail biter. Comes down to a last kick or something late in the fourth quarter. This, like I said, this game's going to be real close, low scoring, beat them up. But Florida has beaten a really good Tennessee team. I think if they get motivated and they get up for this game and remember the fact that it's a rivalry, and I don't think that'll take that long after they get off the buses in Lexington, that they will come out and find a way to win this football game. But this is going to be, if you like Big Ten football, this is going to be very similar to that same kind of brand of football. I think it's going to be real low scoring and real hard hitting.
And hence,
but for my husband's sake and for my daughter's sake, go Gator.
Go Gator. Okay. I like Kentucky football for the same reason I like Utah football. Mark Stoops likes a physical game, likes playing lights out defense. And that occasionally that helps the Wildcats level the playing field against SEC teams that have better talent. And as you mentioned, that's something that Florida has fallen to in recent years. And that has sort of made this a kind of surprise dark horse rivalry. Given that this game is in Lexington in lovely Kroger Stadium, I think the Gators will face another tough outing here. Devin Leary needs to take care of the football. Florida's quarterback. He's thrown 5 picks so far this season, and that he can't give Florida a short field. Can't do that to his defense. But I think UK wins a tight one at home. At 3:30 on Saturday on the American Broadcasting Company, 24 Kansas at number 3 Texas. Texas is favored by 16 and a half points. AJ Fun Index is a fun 62. Carla, is there a chance?
Well, okay. So like the Horns are a huge favorite at home.
Yes.
Right. Yes. And I know this is a perception issue. And I know this is a perception issue, but statistically, these two teams are really evenly matched.
Yes, they are.
When you look at them on paper, like, yes, Texas has that mammoth win over Alabama, although this year that might not be as impressive as it would be in other years. Kansas has 2 wins over formidable foes in Illinois and BYU. Like those are no, no, they're not Alabama, but those are 2 pretty solid wins for a Kansas team. That, last year did the same thing, rattled off a bunch of wins at the beginning of the season, and then had to like win their last game of the season just to become bowl eligible. So you wonder, with an unbeaten Kansas coming into this kind of situation, like, is this gonna be where the wheels fall off and they start like fighting to make sure that they can get bowl eligible by the end of the season? Both teams defensively are pretty good at stopping the run. Both teams have solid quarterbacks in Quinn Ewers and Jalen Daniels. And I think quarterback play could be the difference in this one. So I think Texas wins this game at home. But the line here is real dumb. Like I don't see Texas winning by that margin. I see Texas winning at home. But this game is way closer than anticipated. And I think Kansas can hold their own at least through the first half and maybe make this thing interesting and even into the fourth quarter before Texas finally pulls away here. Because, I mean, we saw Texas struggle against Wyoming. It took them until the fourth quarter to really put that game away. I think you might see a similar situation here. Horns win, but this is much more uncomfortable of a win than what the Texas fans really would like to see here. Okay.
This is a theme for this week, and we will continue with it in our final game of the slate. Kansas is doing its best to shed the basketball school thing, at least playing competitive football. It's making excellent progress this season with a 4-0 start that includes a conference win and a Power 5 non-conference win. Does this mean that this game they have a chance to win here? No, I don't think so. But Kansas is going to be fired up. They will play Texas as tough as possible, and this could be a competitive game. Maybe until Texas kind of pulls away towards the end. Texas, I'm more and more convinced that Texas is back. I know that they've had struggles occasionally, but playing the best football since Mac Brown has been head coach there. So this should be a Longhorn win. At 6 p.m. on ESPN, LSU, number 13 LSU, is traveling to number 20 Ole Miss. LSU is favored by 2.5 points, and the AJ Fun Index is also fun 67. Carla, what do you think?
Is LSU the best team in the SEC West? I think we'll find that out this week, because we both thought Ole Miss had an opportunity to beat Alabama last week. We were wrong. Bama did its Bama thing and found a way to win fairly convincingly at home. That wasn't a huge margin, but they really kind of handled themselves the way that we would expect an Alabama team to handle themselves.
Right.
Wasn't a huge margin, wasn't a bunch of scoring, but it felt like they kind of had control of the game from the very beginning. Other than the season opening loss to Florida State, LSU has been absolutely dominant this season.
Yes.
And so if you're looking at optics, they look like the best team in the division. And now we'll get to see a comparison in a common opponent in consecutive weeks to compare Alabama and LSU going up against the same Ole Miss team. Believe it or not, LSU is statistically the more prolific offense in this game.
Yeah, I noticed that when I was looking stuff up.
Yeah, so Kiffin's not going to outscore the Tigers, right? And that was kind of that's where we thought that Ole Miss had the advantage last week, was that we weren't sure Alabama had anything to offer offensively. It turned out they didn't really need to, because they had a decent defensive effort to kind of slow down that offense. Well, here it's going to be defense again. It's going to come down to the defensive effort and who can create the bigger speed bump. Also, it's worth noting here that Ole Miss's leading rusher is quarterback Jackson Dart.
Oh, that's not good.
Yeah. So I'm going to say LSU wins this game. Sets up a really interesting matchup here in a few weeks when we get LSU Alabama. But I think LSU wins this game and kind of makes us a little bit of a statement as no, we belong in the conversation with the SEC West.
Okay. If you like defense, watch to be sure you're watching Kentucky and Florida, maybe, or Utah, Oregon State. Don't watch this game. If you want offense, this is the game that you want to pay attention to. As you mentioned, in spite of Lane Kiffin's reputation, LSU is actually more prolific on the offensive side of the ball so far this year. There's something about Jaden Daniels, LSU's QB, that I really enjoy watching. He's just seems to be cool and calm and smooth. It's showing in his numbers so far this year. Fifth most yardage with 12 touchdowns and only 2 picks. I think he's going to lead LSU to a road win on Saturday night and a statement for the Tigers. Finally, I didn't write down the network for this one. I believe it's NBC. I will double check that.
It's ABC.
Is it ABC? Okay. Number 11.
ABC.
It is ABC. Number 11 at Notre Dame at number 17 Duke. Notre Dame is favored by 5.5 points. The AJ Fund Index is a middle of the road 55. Carla, can Notre Dame recover from last week's heartbreaking loss?
Okay, you have to wonder when the schedule was put together, how many years ago do you do the schedule? Whether Duke was scheduled kind of as a breather between these gauntlet tests that the Irish have, right? Because they just played you knew Notre Dame was going to be good. You have USC coming up. They're generally pretty good. And Louisville is usually pretty good. And so you have Duke in here and it's like, okay, that's our breather.
Right.
Wrong. Try again. Duke is good now, and looking at stats alone, these two teams are really evenly matched. And this is a Duke team, as you mentioned. I love the basketball analogy here. This is a Duke team that is trying to shed the basketball image. And the college football fan in me really, really, really wants to root for the Dukies at home because I think they can pull this off. But I'm going to take a different approach here for this game. And I want to make the case why you and I, as Ohio State and Penn State fans respectively, actually need Notre Dame to win this game.
I know why.
It comes down to the idea.
I know why. Yes.
Because it comes down to the idea of transitive properties, which is our favorite topic in college football, right? Transitive properties and perception, right? Ohio State beat Notre Dame. It's in the Bucks' best interest for the Irish to finish the season strong now.
Absolutely.
Right? To help improve that perception. It's also beneficial for Duke to lose because it makes Clemson look like a lesser factor and Florida State's late heroics against the Tigers looks less impressive. Right? So you can accomplish two things with Notre Dame winning this game in making Duke look not quite as impressive and also making Notre Dame bounce back from this. So if the Big Ten wants to get 2 teams in the college football playoff, and I think we would be in agreement that would be an ideal situation.
Absolutely.
We need Florida State's resume to not look as impressive.
Okay.
So as much as it really pains me to say this, go Irish.
Go Irish.
Even though my heart says go Duke. I really want Duke to win this game, but we need Notre Dame to win it.
Okay.
So go Irish.
I mean, last year after Ohio State had a solid win at home against Notre Dame in the home opener, Notre Dame promptly goes back to South Bend and loses to Marshall. I'm like, well, okay, whatever transitive properties I was going to get out of that game, they are down the toilet. So yes,
right.
I am a big Notre Dame fan for the rest of the season. So we'll see how that goes. I definitely want them to beat Duke. I think they can. Duke's defense is statistically nearly as good as Ohio State's. And I gave you the rundown of what Ohio State was able to do against Notre Dame's offense, particularly in keeping Sam Hartman in check. I think, but I do think legitimately Notre Dame can win this game, should win this game. And I am rooting for them to do so. Boys and girls, you can hear the Carla and Crappy Show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google, and a variety of other podcasting hosts. You can watch us on YouTube or the show's Facebook page. For the first time this season, you can subscribe to read us on our Substack, where you can also watch and or listen to the show. If you like us, please subscribe, rate, and review. If you don't, mind your own damn business. Be sure to come back next week when we will explain exactly how wrong we were. Carla, any final thoughts?
Yeah, we are on the cusp of Cusaction, or whatever we're gonna call that. Midweek Cusaction. Midweek CUSA football begins, and so to cover our bases here, Thursday night this week, Middle goes to Western Kentucky. This is our rivalry game.
Mm-hmm.
There's 100 miles that separate these two schools. We just don't like each other all that much.
This is the 100 miles of hate. Is that the name?
It was 100 miles of hate.
Okay.
The game's at 7:30 Eastern on Thursday night, and if you happen to hear this before then, it is on CBS Sports Network,
the Network of
Champions. Yes. So, as I mentioned, Middle just didn't really have a consistent answer for the Colorado State offense last weekend. One mistake really cost them the game. That was the scoop and score that they allowed. Western lost to Troy, like, badly, and that was stunning. I hit our text thread on that when I saw that, and I confused AJ because I think he thought he was talking about a directional Michigan. I was talking about Western Kentucky. Troy's a Sun Belt team, and this is a Western Kentucky team that was predicted to win the conference, and to like get blown out by a Sun Belt team. What happened? I really like Middle's chances here, even though it's on the road. Go Blue. I need to also mention, because we might not get it in next week, Middle plays on Wednesday. So we kick off Cusaction next week. Middle plays, so they get a short week, right? We go Thursday to Wednesday. And they are at home at Floyd, in the friendly confines of Floyd Stadium, hosting Jacksonville State. That game would be an 8 Eastern kick. I think it's on CBS Sports Network again. Don't quote me on that, but I think that's another nationally televised game. So Middle has two Jacksonville State should be a good game, but should be a win for Middle. But yeah, this is gonna be here goes that stretch. When we talked to Coach Stockstill over the summer, he said this was where he was starting to get he was nervous about this stretch because of the timing of games. We're gonna see how Middle handles that. One last thing. There's some really good Friday night games this week. Like if you don't have like Friday night high school games, like actually like take Friday night seriously, because we have Louisville at NC State, 7 o'clock on Friday night at ESPN. Both of those teams right in the mix. They're both undefeated, or not. No, they're not both undefeated, but they're right in the mix. I think NC State's 3-1. In the ACC, Cincinnati and BYU. That game is at 10:15. That's your typical Big 12 after dark game.
Sure.
On a Friday night, if that's a thing. So that's at 10:15 Eastern on Friday on ESPN. Also, it's the nightcap of that pairing, that doubleheader. That game should be a bruiser. So yeah, lots of undercard kind of interesting stuff happening. But yeah, clear your Friday night schedule, because that's gonna be fun. And then check your local listings for all of the midweek Cusaction starting next week.
Cusaction. I like that name. I will be looking.
Well, I don't know.
Cusaction. Okay. Well, we're going to work on that for next week. We've got the whole month. We'll see what we can come up with. I need my final thing. I did not see this game, and I'm sort of looking for things to do on Saturday, because both Ohio State and Ohio University are off. But I wanted to note that the Bobcats opened a conference schedule on last Saturday, with a 38-7 win over Bowling Green. It was nice to see the offense kind of perk up the way that it did. But the thing that continues to impress with my Ohio University Bobcats is the defense, and they are a legit top 10 defense in the country, whether we're talking about yardage or scoring defense. They held Bowling Green is not a good team. Bowling Green is they're now 1-3 on the year, but they held Bowling Green to 211 total yards on the day. The Bobcats have this is serving notice to the MAC East. you're going to have a hard time with my Bobcats this season, and hopefully we can parlay this into another trip to the MAC championship game and finally win one of the damn things. How would that be? That would be okay with me. So shout out to my Bobcats. I hope they use this week off to get even better offensively and become the juggernaut that we all know that they can be. Carla,
yes,
thank you once again. I appreciate
thank you as always.
I appreciate you keeping me up to speed on everything while I was gallivanting around Northwest Indiana.
Well, and the fun part was that so I was in Floyd for the good chunk of those night games.
Mm-hmm.
And cell reception was so bad that we actually had to my scoreboard app wouldn't load on my phone.
Yeah.
And so we were texting the people that were still at the tailgate to give us score updates for other games because
nice.
Because we were like, what's the Ohio State score? What's the Penn State score? Just trying to stay apprised as to what else is happening because we had no clue in the stadium because we just we couldn't connect to anything. So yeah, I did my best. But fortunately it was a good weekend for both of our big schools. So
yes. Cheers to that. And cheers to you.
Yes.
And to all of you guys, thank you once again for listening, for watching, for doing all the things that you do with us and for us. Enjoy the games this weekend and come back next week because we're going to do it all again. Cheers, everybody.
Mm-hmm. Cheers.